I was very middle of the road on the first two episodes of Class of '09. And while this one does improve, there are still some issues that I have. But I'll give you my thoughts and reactions to the third episode of Class of '09 right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something new, be among the first to know. Third episode of Class of '09 called Thank You for Not Driving is here. It's hard to say if it picks up right after the last episode because of all the time jumps, but it does sort of, the storyline continues on. My main issue with the first two episodes, was that they did a lot of jumping around from the past, present, future, that I never could get a hold or read on any of the particular characters or their motivations or their how they were acting in that time period. This episode does what I asked them to do, sort of, and lose one of those time periods. Yes, we do still get a scene in the past, but it is very minimal and is used basically just to give a character trait about a poet throughout all of the different time frames. So this picks up. We're in the past where they're going through their training, and there's a training exercise about driving, and they have to do like a J turn, which basically is like driving and then doing a complete turn and coming back the other way. Um, and they're practicing it over and over again. And Poet is messing up at this a bunch of times, and her driving instructor is telling her that you're too rigid. You're too rigid, and you need to loosen up and kind of just go with the flow a little bit. And doing that allows her to get the turn correctly, and everybody cheers for her. But that just shows you that her personality, her normal MO, is to always try to be rigid and go by the book. So while she is always an open heart for caring for everybody, her mentality, the way that she carries herself, is very rigid and stoic, which not within this character. Kate Mara as a actress usually plays that way, and that's why I think sometimes it's hard for me to fully engage into her character. She's not a bad actress, but she's also not like an exuberantly great one either. She's very matter of fact, and for us as an audience to follow her character, Poet, a little bit more than we're following Teo, is why I think some of my connection level isn't as strong as it would be had those been reversed. Or say, for instance, we spoke of Quantico a lot. The character on that episode was much more engaging and much more. There are more highs and lows, whereas Kate Mara is playing this pretty straight, and Poet doesn't really have ebbs and flows. That's a character trait for her. That's what she's supposed to be, but it doesn't lead to a very engaging protagonist if that's who I'm following along with. We then go to the present, where Teo is basically launching a full wage war assault on anybody who can give them Mark's whereabouts. If you remember the last episode in the present, he and his partner got into a shootout. Showed him to go look in the basement. He looked in the basement, and that's where he found all the stuff that was following him and Billings, his wife, everything was. So he's just trying to find any known associate that he can attach to Mark so he can find him before Mark gets a hold of some of the things that he clearly was trying to do in this. And in doing that, he finds a hold of one of Mark's acolytes. That's what I'll use that term. Who says that you have no idea what's coming for you, which is a very ominous tone, but he's clearly saying that we still have the one up on you while you don't have it on us. And they arrest that man, and we see him further along in the episode during an interrogation. In the last episode, Poet was told to go see Ower, and she does. And it's clear that they've had a falling out. Their relationship has not been as tight as it was once when they were younger. And this episode does the job of basically showing how that happened and what happened for them. The guy who was in Poet's place at the end of the first episode, Armos Garcia, who is a known, he's built systems and whatnot. He stole this program, this system from Orr, kind of at the behest of Poet. That's how Orr feels about this. And so their falling out comes because she didn't side, Poet, as being the she, didn't side with Orr, but kind of sided with the company man, the rigidness, again, coming up. She's following the guidelines by the book and sort of left Orr out to dry. Also, we see when Poet shows up to Orr's place, she is married or dating a woman with a child. But just sort of shows you that she is bisexual, it appears, because she's at some point in time in the present, when we see her, she's getting engaged to a gentleman, and then this one she's with a woman. We then find out that at some point in time she confessed her true nature and love for Poet, and Poet kind of just blew that off. I was like, nope, don't want any parts of that. And then subsequently sabotaged her working relationship as well. That's what we get in the future. So we learn that she somehow sabotaged that, and then we actually get to see how that took place. So Poet in the present is in a room with Or getting sort of the lay of the land of her new program. This program that she's saying can kind of get the best, get a couple of steps up and levels up on people to get information to figure out how to solve crimes and what have you. Basically, she's the one responsible for the whatever is Teo is implemented. She's kind of the one that started that, but Armos sort of grabbed that from her. And they're using like this BICAP situation as sort of the heartbeat of this new program. And she goes to present this to like the board, and they shut it down. They're like, nah, that's not going to work. It's too many bugs, too many things that we have to go through, too many loops that I have to go through. And they just kind of say, shut it down. This is sort of when these stories, two present stories, sort of start merging together, and the future kind of becomes the outlet, the fallout of that. We see a scene where Mark kind of evades police capture. There's like a patrol stop that is there looking in everybody's car, and they pull up with the truck that Mark is actually in, but he's sort of in a hidden compartment in the truck. So they let him go, and he evades the police. In doing so, as Teo leaves the house to go to work, his wife also leaves, and it's sort of T-bone stopped by a Dan who was trying to assassinate her. They take out guns and go to town shooting, but in shooting her, she is shocked to see that their window is a bulletproof glass windshield. And so she gets out, she rams the car into one of the assailants, takes the gun, and gets rid of the other. And so she thwarts the two people that are trying to attack her. We see then Teo come back home. He's freaking out, and they're having a conversation because she's kind of like, "Well, why didn't you tell me? Why is there a bulletproof windshield?" He's like, "Well, we've got threats. I don't want to scare you, and I don't want you." She's like, "No, let me. We're in this together. You need to make me aware of these situations." So it's one of the few times that we've gotten actually any. Everything has been so much. These people are playing caricatures of what the stoic person, the rigid person, this and this, and this is the first time we kind of actually have any emotion between two people. Even with the Poet and Or stuff that we get in the future, Or is giving the relationship and giving the emotion, but just because of the way that I believe they're trying to get Poet to portray, she's very stoic and rigid in hers. But in this, Teo and his wife are having a conversation, and he's kind of like, "No, I got to protect you. I got to protect you." So this is you can start seeing. I'm starting to see the tea leaves of what's happening or how he got to where he's at in the future. Because we don't see his wife in the future, I think something's obviously going to probably happen to her that he could prevent and is not able to because the system wasn't in place. But it is at this point that Teo asks his wife, "Do you want me to quit the FBI?" Because he'll do it if that's what she wants. And she's like, "No, that's not that's not what I want. You would be miserable if you were here. What would you do?" Take care of our kids, and they're like, "We don't we don't have kids." One of the few moments of levity that this show has. So then, right after that, Teo goes back to the acolyte that he captured from Mark, who's in an interrogation room. He kind of like questioned him about the attacks. Like, I know you know the attack. And the dude kind of just feigns ignorance. Like, I have no idea what attack you're talking about. And he's like, okay, cool. To that point that he steps out and has a decision to make. We then go back to Poet and Or in the present, and Poet is arriving at Or's engagement party. Right after they've a couple years after they've gotten out of the bureau. This is them living their regular life. She's always engaged to a man, very different than the future. And her parents are there, and it's the first time the Poet meets her parents. They're all kind of like, "Hey, I know you. Like, it's good to see you for the first time." And I'm sure that at some point in time, Or has, while she may not have at this point let Poet know how she feels, she's probably told people close to her how she feels about Poet. But her family seems very much like, "Nope, you got to do the traditional. We're forcing you because of where we come from. You got to marry a man." Like, so I think her beliefs have always been towards women, but I think this is more of a beard situation where parents are like, "This is what you got to do. You got to go get a guy, give me a kid, so on and so forth." Drew, who is her teacher in the past, is there at the engagement party, which just seems an odd person to sort of bring in. But the only reason I bring that up is because she did sort of mention that the best class of that she had at the FBI was her class of '09, and so that because an off-cuff poet asked like, how's the new group? It's like, nope, no one's ever going to beat you guys. You're still the best class, which is interesting because in the four that I've seen, they all seem to have a very different way of being the best. Life seems to have been hard for her, so I can imagine what the rest of this class looks like if this is the best you've got out of the four that were in that class. But Ower knows that the FBI has asked Poet to sort of spy on her and keep an eye on her and about the program. Poet's like, well, how did you know that? So, well, the second they asked if you would be the person, I kind of put it all together, and then all of a sudden you show up. So at that point, that she then gets a call from Teo, who somebody she has not spoken to in forever. This picks up right at the scene where Teo just left the interrogation room. He's staring inside that interrogation cell at Mark's acolyte and kind of like, hey, real quick, tell me about that program you were doing. Now, mind you, it has already been shut down. Poet is kind of keeping an eye and making sure that, hey, this isn't on the up and up. So then she talks to Teo for a while, giving him the rundown. And Teo's like, cool, get back to the office. I want to use this. So he gets all prepped, goes back into the interview room to interrogate this gentleman. And Poet and O are kind of going back and forth and saying, hey, you shouldn't be using this. This isn't what you should be using. You shouldn't be doing this. While Teo's interviewing, he's starting to get some clues. He's getting some stuff. Some stuff is starting to read out. And it gives them a couple of options. I forgot what the options were, but it's like construction, something else, something else, something else. But the construction truck is kind of what the clue that they go with. And that allows them to go find Mark. And Mark is captured and arrested. Teo runs home to tell his wife that, yeah, we got him. We got him. Now I'm about to go interrogate him. And his wife is like, well, why do you have to be the one to go interrogate him? It's like, he doesn't really have an answer for that. It's like, well, just cause, like I am. She's not wrong. I don't know why Teo had to be the one to go do this. I feel like he has a sense of like, I got to finish this. No one's going to have one up on me. You try to take a hit out on me, I'm going to try to end you. He feels like he has to be there for it. I do think it's a little dangerous though to do it at a time. He feels like he's won. He feels like, hey, everything is over. I got everything. But I do think it's dangerous at a time to do that and leave your wife just kind of out in the open without you sort of protecting her. That's my only sort of issue. We'll see in the next episode. So then we go back to the future, and Or and Poet are kind of spending a little bit more time together because Poet has let her know that, hey, I got some things that I need to work out, and people are after me. Armand, who used your system and kind of stole your system, I need your help to figure out what all this does and what all this means and why he gave this to me. So can you come with me? So they go off, but while they're driving, there's a security checkpoint, if you will, in the future that even before they get to it, it's already scanned their car. They know that there's two women. They know that one of the women has a legal firearm. The car starts being basically taken over and is self-driving itself to a point. It's very scary of what could happen in the future at security checkpoints if they can do all that scanning before you even get to the security checkpoint. But they are allowed to leave, not because I think that they were in the clear. I think Teo was watching them and watching the whole time. And once he saw it was the two of them, he's like, nope, I want the two of them to go, because he's sort of using her as the cheese on the trap to get to the point where she wants to. So he needs her to kind of keep going because he knows that she's steadfast in her ways. That she's eventually going to lead him to where he wants. And now that I've seen this, Teo definitely loses his wife. It's probably going to be sad, tormented, but this is what leads him to this path of, nope, I want to see this through. And this is why he said in the last episode, he's like, nope, let me stick around for another 5 years or 5 months or however long. Let me get an extension because I want to see this through. I think because something occurred to his wife, he wants to make sure that he sticks around to make sure that this happens and everything that he's built stays in place so that people like him can't feel the pain that he's gone through when he lost his wife. I don't know, but I have a feeling calling it. So Poet enters the card in the reader when they get to this facility, and it starts giving a bunch of screens and a lot of code, and Poet doesn't understand it, but Ower does. And in that, there's a lot of warnings from Armand on the screen saying, "Hey, you're in danger. You're in danger. You don't know what you've been to. You've been lied to. You've been lied to this whole time." And then there's a thing that says you must investigate what Teo knows. So they're now kind of given the blueprint that Teo is in more than than is perceived. So what this is giving me is that something catastrophic is about to happen to Teo in this situation with Mark and his wife. That is going to lead him down a path that just makes him angry. He's going to do whatever he can to sort of make sure that this never occurs again, probably circumventing some rules to do so. I think the story that happened in the previous episode about him being slapped when he was a young kid has sort of led this breadcrumb to him becoming this sort of jaded person. He's like, nope, the law doesn't apply to people who look like me, so we're going to make it apply so that we can kind of take the guesswork out of doing the police work. Final scene is that Poet and Or retire to bed. They kind of say their good nights to each other in separate rooms. Poet is coming to a realization that some of the choices she's made, the rigid behavior that she's had this entire time, has led her down a path that has caused her to trust the incorrect people, has caused her to turn people against the people that she actually did care about and love. Who knows if Poet was given another shot, if she would say "I love you" too back to Or, but she didn't in that time because she had this. She want her business, everything she wanted to do was by the book. She's caused a lot of turmoil for people, and she also shunned her friend's work, who clearly was doing something worthwhile, and it would have been better had that work stayed in her hands versus going into someone else's hands and kind of being used in a corrupt way versus the way that she originally intended for it to. So she's in bed, kind of tearing up, and Or, knowing her friend, knowing how much she has a bleeding heart, comes and knocks on the door and sees that she's crying, kind of just comes and hugs her and holds her. And it doesn't seem like she's doing it in a like I love you, um, I'm in love with you type of way. It does it more in like I love you and I care about you and I know you're hurting. Even though you've pissed me off and caused me pain, I'm still going to be here for you because you've done this part for me so many times. So there's a lot of character pieces that are occurring in this that work for me. And I think the biggest reason why this episode is my favorite and works better than the previous two is because we basically lose one of those time frames. Like the past is literally just the start off point, and we're never go back to the past again. We spend the rest of our time in two of them. I think we got to learn more about characters. We got to learn more about who Teo is. We got to learn more about who Or and Poet is in just the present and the future. Whereas if we do the next episodes, I'm perfectly fine saying, okay, cool, we're not going to go to the future again. We're going to let this all play out in the past and the present, and we'll show you just a tidbit of the future. I think that's what you kind of have to do, the juggling, because there's just not enough time in these 45 to 50-minute episodes. I think that I looked ahead, the next episode's only like 37 minutes. You can't give me three time zones. I mean, three time frames in that sort of a period of time. You got to choose two or choose one and tell a story there. But better episode, but I think that still my biggest hang up is who we're following as the protagonist. I just don't yet find Poet engaging or endearing enough for me to care about telling the story through her eyes. I actually would prefer, honestly, if we were telling it through Or's eyes. I feel like there's more story and more variants of emotions there than there are with whatever they have Kate Mara giving us as Poe. But that's just my opinion. What did you guys think about this episode, the third episode of Class of '09? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI. You can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have the podcast with the same name. That's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.